It's begun. The 2025 car market crash is finally here. We're seeing all kinds of news and examples of this, from the first car company to actually go out of business in 2025. And with the incoming president signing off on removal of the mandates of electrified vehicles means one thing: companies with millions of dollars tied up in investments, research and development of their new electric vehicles, they've thrown all that money out the window because many people are going to revert back to internal combustion vehicles, meaning a lot of car companies will become obsolete. And with many car companies like Volkswagen, who overinvested in electrification, advanced it too quickly, it isolated a lot of buyers. Unfortunately, the EU regulations is advancing and fast-tracking 2030, 2035 regulations for emissions. And sadly, now that puts companies like Volkswagen and VAG, Audi, Porsche Group all at serious risk of going out of business. This year is a big one. On top of it, the worst part is the recent president incoming in the United States has also suggested that they might apply some serious tariffs to any European country simply because they don't have a huge representation of American vehicles. On top of it, vehicles like these, the Rams, now are looked at because Kuniskis came back at the power and said, look, we have to get the company back in business. We have vehicles now that are no longer selling, and the electrified Ram is no longer going to be fast-tracked. It's going to be put on the back burner, and Ram may even consider bringing back the V8 powered drivetrains for their pickup trucks. A lot of the Stellantis products are in serious distress because they were owned by a European company which has more of an electrified incentive and priority in mind, sadly leaving a lot of their North American buyers out dangling in the wind. And with prices like $85,000 for Wrangler Rubicon X 4xe, just means that the prices have gone out of touch with the average buyer. And sadly, things don't look to be getting any better. While there's been heavy incentives in the fourth quarter of 2024, the base price is going up on a lot of these core vehicles. And car companies like Stellantis has a few electric vehicles. The Fiat 500e, they have the Wagoneer S, as well as the electric Charger, and one of their ProMaster vans are some electric vehicles that they have in their arsenal, all clearly not selling particularly well. And other than one little Fiat in their fleet, the majority of the product line in Stellantis has seen drastic falls in sales. Ram trucks like this entire fleet here have gone down in sales by as much as 19%. Dodge products like this little Hornet, as well as a Durango, went by as much as 29% in 2024, a clear indication nobody wants these products. Alfa Romeo dropped about 19% as well. The Chrysler product line also dropped by 7%, and really all they have is the minivan, so it should be of no surprise. But if you're looking for a van, a lot of times people are just going to Toyota and Honda. They know they can trust those, and these are not all that cheap either. You'd think for a vehicle lacking in reliability that you get a break on the pricing, but here instead you get this long, lean and mean minivan. And here we have, look at this, base price $47,000, and you get a list of options right here, and it takes you to a grand total of $50,000 for a base minivan. Out the door, 55 grand. You know they're out of touch. And even Jeep sales fell as much as 9% in 2024. Clear indication that it's not because of the popularity issues, because a lot of people do love the vehicles like the Wranglers as well as the Jeep Grand Cherokee. It really boils down to price. Price is what dictates how people are going to buy these vehicles. And you look at the sticker in the window, and right here you'll notice $85,000 for this Jeep here too. And while we talk about the cost of living crisis, there is a small percentage of people out there say there's actually no crisis at all. Many would beg to differ on that conversation, because realistically it's only about the top 5% that are actually thriving enough to be able to go out there and write a check for one of these brand new vehicles. The reality is the top 90-95% of the population is struggling right now. Cost of living crisis, housing, food, groceries, you name it, it's a struggle right now. And Nissan sales have been in the tank this year. The first part of 2024 showed that they lost about 99% of their profits, all tied up into marketing schemes, into incentives, just to try to push a lot of these products out the door. Rogues, problems, of course, we're hearing a lot of with the variable compression engines, the CVT transmissions. Nissan Sentra, same sort of storyline, as well as the Altima, which is a lackluster product when you have Camrys and Accords available to buy. Even their pickup trucks are clearly not selling enough vehicles to make the profits come back for the brand. Sadly, we're looking at the Frontier, has a lot to offer, but a lot of people are steering away from that vehicle. And unfortunately, just with a growing inventory of Nissan products and the lack of interest from the buyers, just means it's been a constant struggle. And rumor had it that Nissan was within 12 to 14 months of going out of business, and it wasn't up until Honda stepped up to the game, said, look, we'll be one of your core investors, try to get this show back on the road. But with that said, I mean, we could look at some major changes in the brand, some of which may or may not be positive for Nissan, some of them may be more beneficial for Honda. Regardless, they do plan to get together with Mitsubishi in collaborating to build an electric future for Nissan and Honda as a whole. With that said, it's hard to say what the future looks like. Either way, it's very slim pickings when they're talking about competing with the Chinese market, who has a stranglehold on electric vehicle sales. And then car companies like Ford continue building larger and larger pickup trucks, like these very expensive Harley-Davidson trucks. They're great. I mean, they look wonderful. I love the looks of these, the big wheels, the big flares, all kinds of lift kits, and you know what, lots of nice, great badging. But these vehicles aren't cheap. At $180,000, $190,000 makes a person wonder who can afford these. But yet we have all these trucks loading up the lots. Who's buying these vehicles? Who can afford to buy these full-size HD trucks? Here's a 350 Platinum. That's not going to be cheap. Here's as well another diesel. Well, let's take a look. This is more of a work truck. You've got the plastic grille. Everything's more plastic, fantastic. Pretty basic vehicle. How much is this unit? Well, $117,000. And this one does have leather, it looks like, but it still feels a little bit dressed down, and that shouldn't, because this is a Lariat, does have leather and sunroof, but it doesn't look like it has all the amenities. It does have a little bit more of a dressed down look, and maybe that's what's going on. Ford said they're dropping thousands of parts on their new pickup trucks because they're creating more of a modularity and reducing the number of components within each individual vehicle. Maybe there's some cost-cutting measures. In my opinion, this looks to be one of them right there. And then Ford is leading the recalls. They have a huge one right now, of course, with the Mustang Mach-E with the self-driving system, where there's allegedly a couple of fatalities related directly to the programming or the design of that automated driving system. There's also recalls for the small Maverick as well as the Bronco Sport related to batteries. There's a 12-volt battery system that is wearing out a little too quickly. And while Ford is selling trucks and they're one of the leading truck sales for 2024, they could sell a lot more metal if they had more price point vehicles, which clearly they've given up all of their lower cost cars. And on top of the alleged recalls for Ford and their V6 EcoBoost engines having problems with dropping valves, there are lawsuits that cost money, and that money gets transferred, unfortunately, down to the consumer, which means prices aren't going to get any less. We also have GM. They've had problems with their gas engines. Now what we have here is a diesel, Duramax, Allison. Now these have been fairly rugged, but unfortunately GM prices keep going up. They are selling vehicles and their trucks are very popular, but it comes at a cost and prices keep going up. And at some point this is going to break. Consumers are limited. There's not enough affordable vehicles for the consumers to buy anymore. And 2025, in the midst of the cost of living crisis, means that these big glorious pickup trucks like this 3500 HD right here is a much longer reach and stretch for any consumer to buy. Most people can't afford to buy vehicles like this. They don't come cheap. I mean, you get the Allison with the Duramax, of course you get a 3500 HD, great rims, beautiful truck finishing on the front of this thing. You circle around, how much is this unit? Well, let's take a look. Oh wow, 6 figures all day long. See, because 2025 looks to be a transition year. A lot of people are looking for more cost-effective vehicles. We see interest rates aren't changing a lot, and that will have a huge impact on the sales of a lot of these vehicles. As vehicle prices continue to rise, less and less people are in the market. And Volkswagen sales have been down this year as well, and they continue to drop, with their ICE vehicles showing less and less interest by the consumers due to the quality challenges that we're finding in a lot of these products. The quality just isn't there from my own personal perception. And you look at a lot of these vehicles, they just are lackluster in design, a little boring, a little ho-hum. And honestly, now their transition to the EV market means that Volkswagen is in a tough spot. Experts over at Volkswagen say that in 2025, they're looking to have about a $1.6 billion impact negatively against the brand because of trying to meet these regulations, these EU regulations, to the transition to cleaner fuels. A big part of the brand is with these new electric vehicles such as the ID.4, Buzz ID, and all these fun little electric vehicles. Less and less people are getting excited about the brand. This is one of the few vehicles that is holding a little bit of a cult following. You're talking about the Golf. This one's an R. Of course, these are a lot of fun. Dual clutch, you get a turbo 4-cylinder engine with a DCT or a manual gearbox, and you can have a lot of fun with these 300 ponies. They are great, but these are one of the few Volkswagens that people are even looking for these days. Everything else is vanilla yogurt. And part of the problem is when they redesign the Atlas, for example, like this is a full-size SUV, very large. It's meant to haul around 3 rows of people as well, and it's quite substantial in its size. It has all of the bling. Sure, you get LED tail lights and you get all-wheel drive and the 4Motion, but look, it's fake exhaust tips. And the worst part is the outgoing model had a V6 engine, and now Volkswagen is cheaping out and giving you a turbo 4-cylinder with 250 horsepower, which is barely enough. And a lot of customers are saying that's clearly not enough power, clearly undersized. There's a strong feeling by a lot of people in the industry that believe that that engine won't last nearly as long. You're trying to create same amounts of power with half the engine. It's a little heat sink up front, trying to generate the same amount of performance, and it's not built to last. None of these vehicles by Volkswagen are built to last like they used to, and that's why sales have been declining as well. VAG as a whole, Volkswagen, Audi, even Porsche have seen some major declines. And this year, in an attempt to try to save costs, Volkswagen had to shut down at least 2 plants, maybe possibly even more, and lay off thousands of workers, all because they could not meet their budgets. Volkswagen was in a struggle this year. Employees weren't happy, buyers weren't happy, nobody was happy. Now on top of it, with this incoming president, Trump, he's actually saying, you know what, for years, these European countries have got up scot-free. They're bringing all these vehicles to North America and customers are buying these vehicles. But now, instead of this, where are the US vehicles in Europe? There are very few. And Trump has already alleged that when he gets into power, he's looking at applying some major tariffs. What I heard was he's looking at applying tariffs to the point where you either shut them down completely, or there may be a big possibility that the tariffs are so large, if they want to conduct business in North America, they're going to actually have to relocate, bring plants to North American soil and employ North American workers. And then the Toyota Tundra is another classic example of a vehicle that's no longer selling like they initially did when it first came out. Now you can find virtually tons and tons of inventory. When you're talking about Tundras and Tacomas, the pickup trucks in Toyota have struggled with quality control issues. The twin-turbo V6 engine found in these Tundras have been the source of a lot of struggles and a lot of controversy for Toyota brand for catastrophic engine failures. There's no shortage of inventory now on these vehicle lots, and vehicles by Toyota, you no longer have to wait. You pull up, you basically sign on the dotted line and drive away in your new Toyota pickup truck. I mean, most people expect sales to decline on some of the poorer brands. Jaguar, for example, took a year off because they're not selling vehicles. Another indication that the struggles are real. Pulling out completely from a market is a surefire indication that things are not all well in the industry. And Toyota's starting to feel it as well. And it's not just their pickup trucks. Toyota has struggled with sales of some of their more popular vehicles as well. There's now lots of inventory, RAV4s, some of their more cost-effective vehicles, the popular, reliable vehicles, there's lots of inventory. We're seeing lots as well, inventory of very popular cars that are lower cost, and that's a surefire small end of the wedge indicator that cars are not selling that well in Toyota land. We're seeing all kinds of Corollas on the lot, filling up the lot like we've never seen. You look back 2 years ago, you wouldn't find one of these vehicles on the lot, and they're piling up right now at an alarming rate. Even the Toyota Land Cruiser, they're filling up the lots, and people are finding the struggles to make that make sense. When the Lexus GX gives you a third row and it gives you a V6 instead of the Turbo 4, it just feels like an obsolete product right out of the box. And while Toyota is one of the most trusted brands in the industry, they're not perfect, they're not flawless, and they've had some challenges this year as well, with some test results on crash testing, with some emissions testing results on Hino, and it's clear to say that even Toyota is starting to feel some of the struggles with sales on vehicles. When we're seeing inventory levels that we haven't seen in quite some time, Toyota has been struggling selling vehicles, especially Tundras, especially Tacomas. Things have been tough. And this year, another small company called Mobility Motors sells services, cars, vehicles from Mercedes-Benz, Hyundai, as well as many others, and Mazda for inclusively, has struggled this year with sales. They're down $9.5 million in terms of overall debt, trying to pay their creditors, parts, replacements. And it's another example of many companies now, this year in 2025, are stuck trying to reorganize their company, sort out their wins, discard their losses and find ways to try to stay in business. They had a tough year in 23, 24 looks even worse, and unfortunately there's lots of stories like this with small companies going out of business every single day. And the next car company, Canoo, is the next one to go out of business. It's a startup EV company. They've had struggles staying afloat. They've tried to integrate with numerous other companies just to try to get their vehicles out to market, and things were looking positive. Things were looking upbeat, but unfortunately the market is so cutthroat this year. 2025 promised to sift out the weak. The weak will fall through the cracks this year in 2025 as competition is fierce, and the electric vehicle market is coming in fast and furious from the Chinese market, not to mention the stricter EU regulations in Europe, and as well as some of the tariffs that may be imposed to a lot of car companies means that this year could be tough for a lot of companies starting up, trying to keep going and keep their doors open. We're going to see each and every year from this point on getting more and more difficult for vehicle manufacturers to compete with the stricter EU regulations, with tariffs that may or may not be imposed in the US and Canada and Mexico and beyond. Things are going to get interesting, and many car companies are going to find it very difficult to compete in this very aggressive market. On top of all of this, the cost of living crisis means that less and less people are buying vehicles. Certainly people are looking for lower cost vehicles, but they want their features. That's the conundrum. People want the technology, but they don't want to pay for it. And these manufacturers decide that they want to continue to build vehicles with higher profit margins. That means higher trim level vehicles, more premium vehicles, trucks, SUVs are the flavor of the day. And unless we're able to get back to a place where manufacturers are creating lower cost effective vehicles with all of the technology and safety features that everybody wants, we're likely going to be stalled out. This cost of living crisis is taking us all for a roller coaster ride. And even with rumors like Stellantis possibly slashing prices on their Rams by as much as 30-35%, maybe even as much as 50% here in 2025, it's going to continue putting downward pressure on a lot of the other manufacturing competitors from GM as well as Ford. With all of that said, be sure to check out that video right there. What's going on with Ford? You're going to love to hear that one. Hope to see each and every one in the next one. See you then. Bye-bye.